And good evening and good morning to some of you. Welcome back to the 8th class of our course. So, as usual, yeah, before we begin, I'd like to invite all of us to sit down comfortably on your chair, fully feel the presence of ourselves sitting on the chair, both our legs resting comfortably on the floor. Move our toe a little bit. Feel our feet touching firmly on the ground. Fine tune your body. Make sure our spine is straight. Our head staring forward. Take a deep breath. Slowly breathe in. Breathe out. One more time. Breathe in. Breathe out. One last time. Breathe in. Breathe out. Feel our environment. Know where we are sitting. Knowing that we're about to start our lecture tonight. And I hope we can have a fruitful and fun journey for the next 90 minutes. Thank you so much. So, as usual, before we begin, I'd like you to join me by joining your palms together. Let's pay homage to our teacher. Homage to the Supreme Teacher, Shakyamuni Buddha. Homage to the Supreme Teacher, Shakyamuni Buddha. Homage to the Supreme Teacher, Shakyamuni Buddha. Please release your hands. All right, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about a bodhisattva, which is very important in Chinese Buddhism, and I'm sure all of us are so familiar with him or her. Just before we actually begin, I'd like you to watch a very interesting movie, a short clip from the YouTube. Okay. Okay, you got the idea, right? So the Guan Yin Bodhisattva is who we're going to talk about today. The video you just saw was a very famous show. I think it started in China. Uh, the performers were actually people with hearing problems. So they were using the hand gesture to show us a very symbolic bodhisattva of Chinese Buddhism. That is the Guan Yin with 1,000 hands, with 1,000 eyes. So, who is this Guan Yin Bodhisattva? I would like to introduce her to all of us today to look about. Okay. We're going to talk about the general introduction to Guan Yin, who the Guan Yin is, why is it called Guan Yin, what is a Sanskrit term for Guan Yin, and how it started, the origin of Guan Yin Bodhisattva, and how it became someone we know so dearly in China, especially, well, I mean, in the whole world. If you go to Chinese Buddhism, you definitely see Guan Yin Bodhisattva. And about how the Guan Yin become a very important Chinese Bodhisattva. Yeah. Nowadays, if you ask anyone, any Chinese people, who is Guan Yin? Everybody will tell you that she was a Chinese, right? And we no longer related her to Indian Buddhism. So why is that so? What was the reason? That's what we're going to talk about today. Right. First of all, Guan Yin Bodhisattva in Sanskrit we call Avalokiteshvara. This is the most famous figure you will see in Chinese Buddhism. The Guan Yin Bodhisattva is always wearing a white robe, and you can see a statue on top of her, and she's holding a bottle in her hand, right? And we call it nectar. Nectar is in a bottle. The nectar is believed to the ability to cleanse and purify us. And she has the Amitabha Buddha on top of her. She has a white robe, and this is how we are used to see Avalokiteshvara. So this is the image. So the Sanskrit name is actually Avalokiteshvara. Yeah. What does that mean? The meaning of Avalokiteshvara is the hearing of the sound of the earth. Like all the living beings, whoever call for her name, and she will hear us and she will come for us. So this is actually the meaning of Avalokiteshvara. So when the term was translated into Chinese, yeah, we either see Guan Yin, like Guan Yin literally means the perceiver of sounds. So she perceives sounds. What kind of sounds? Words, prayers from all living beings who call out her name. And of course, Guan Shi Yin, right, is a more complete translation of Avalokiteshvara. It's got perceiver of the world, the sound of the world. That is a Guan Shi Yin. It's either Guan Yin or Guan Shi Yin. So, who is she actually? We know her by her very distinct characteristic. She is the Bodhisattva of compassion. Whenever we talk about Bodhisattva, right, we may have the image of someone who has great compassion to show, who helps people, who give love to people, and to give hope to people. So there is a Bodhisattva compassion. So the transmission started that we knew that the Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, the idea of her started to emerge in India, right? And then it became especially popular in China. It started actually more than 1,000 years ago, more than 1,600 years ago, from the Northern and Southern dynasty. Yeah, that was before the Tang dynasty. So, and we all know that Guan Yin Bodhisattva became the China's most beloved Bodhisattva. So why is that so? What happened? Let's go a little bit deeper into understanding who is this Guan Yin or Avalokiteshvara. So first of all, what is a Bodhisattva? Right? We hear about this term all the time. In Chinese, we call Pusa. I remember when the first time I went to the Chinese temple, and whenever we refer to, may I speak to, let's say, Mr. Lee or Miss Lee, right? And then they say, Li Pusa, right? Or Sije Pusa. They always add the name Bodhisattva when you refer to someone, or let be a volunteers or other Buddhists to a temple. So why do we call everyone Pusa or Bodhisattva in a Chinese temple? Right. So the meaning of Bodhisattva is really simple. Is a being who vows to liberate all beings. Right. And the characteristic is we do not hoped to go to Nirvana so soon, but we like to stay and as long as possible to help other beings to go to Nirvana together. So that is more like a vow that we make if we start this journey. We want to actually help others. So the most distinctive characteristic of Guanyin Bodhisattva is our will to help other people to go to achieve the goal of enlightenment. So, if we compare to early Buddhism to Mahayana, we can see that in early Buddhism, we also talk about Bodhisattva, right? So the idea of Bodhisattva is not only confined to Mahayana. Even early Buddhism, like even Theravada Buddhism today, we talk about Bodhisattva. But the idea of Bodhisattva is a little bit different. So for early Buddhism, they primarily talk about the historical Buddha, and because we believe that the previous life of the Buddha, he was a Bodhisattva, right? The Buddha has gone through many lives of Bodhisattva, and there's another also distinctive figure in early Buddhism is a Maitreya. Maitreya is the future Buddha who would come, still a long time from now on, but he will be the next Buddha who will be reborn in this world. So that is the Maitreya, like we see in this photo here. The Maitreya as depicted in Chinese Buddhism is this fat figure, right? With a big tummy, always laughing. We call Laughing Buddha. So he's a very welcoming figure. So we always see Maitreya Buddha. We call it Mila Pusa in Chinese at the entrance of the temple to welcome people because of his very funny and also welcoming characteristic. So this is for the early Buddhism, but for Mahayana, we recognize many bodhisattvas, right? And we love to call those who practice together or other Buddhists the same name. We call them Pusa. That means bodhisattva. That means that all of us come together to the temple. We have already made a vow to reach a bodhicitta, to train for our bodhicitta, so that in the future we might become enlightened. Okay. So in this photo, we can see that we have the Guanyin on this side, the Guanyin Bodhisattva. We have the Maitreya, and then we have the Buddha. So these are the most common figure we see in a Chinese temple. Okay, so how popular is Guanyin Bodhisattva in the Chinese Buddhism? So there's a term in Chinese they say that 家家弥陀佛，户户观世音. Right? It means that everybody knows how to chant Amitofo, right? Amitabha. They chant the name Amitabha, and every household worships Guanyin. So this is how popular Guanyin Bodhisattva is among Chinese family. Either they are Buddhist or non-Buddhist, Taoist, either they are Confucius, either they are non-believer. You will see like Guanyin Bodhisattva is everywhere in the Chinese culture. So actually, there are many. If you talk to many people, I remember my family members. When I talk to my mom, she always, when I was young, and she always took me to the temple and pay prostration, especially to Guanyin Bodhisattva, because for most Chinese people, Guanyin is the one that is protecting us. And we're so familiar with her, we think that she is like the mother of all people. in this world. So a few weeks ago, we were conducting the ceremony, one very important ceremony of Guan Yin Bodhisattva here at Chongyan Monastery in New York. So I make a brief speech on about my experience with Guan Yin Bodhisattva. Let me show you part of it.
的一个这样的一个经验哦。
Okay.
So for myself, I remember that I personally met Guan Yin Bodhisattva 3 times in my life. 那第一次呢，是我很小的时候。我记得那时候我就是一个很调皮的小孩，也不爱念书。然后呢，有一次，我妈妈就把我带到一间观音庙，在我家乡的观音庙，就让我跪下，然后就跟我说：“你赶快合掌，叫观音菩萨一声干妈。”没想到呢，从那时候开始呢，我就真的感觉上有点变乖了。那现在回想起来，也许那一种我们在华人传统里面，把小孩我们讲过气给观音妈妈，我们讲观音妈妈，是一种给自己一种信仰的一种开始，给自己信心的开始。那也是我一个很大的转变的开始。So the first time in my memory that I met Guan Yin Bodhisattva was when I was still a very naughty child who didn't really like to study and do my work. So one day, my mother took me to a Guan Yin temple in my hometown and made me call the Guan Yin Bodhisattva the godmother. Right? Well, I did, even though only half-heartedly. But strange enough, right? From that day on, I did become a little more well-mannered, right? And when I look back to that time, that little moment of trust may have marked the beginning of a quiet inner change within myself. 那第二次呢？
Okay, so that was the little story I shared. I talk about the Guan Yin Bodhisattva and how actually my first encounter when I was a kid, right? I didn't know much about Buddhism, I didn't know much about religion, but it's happened to all of us as a kid. So I'm sure some of you might have a similar experience to deal with Bodhisattva, especially the Guan Yin, who is so much into our life. Okay, so still, there are some sacred place we call that is like very specially dedicated to Guan Yin Bodhisattva. The first one is in China. It's called Putuoshan. Right, it's an island for pilgrimage. For us to do pilgrimage to Guan Yin Bodhisattva, as we see the map on the right hand side here. Actually, this is a huge, quite a huge island. There are like many temples on the island, and each of them has very distinct or different Guan Yin Bodhisattva for us to go there for a pilgrimage trip. So this is one of the representation of the pilgrimage to Guan Yin Bodhisattva in China, right? And the second one, of course, we know that this is the Potala Palace in Tibet, right? This is where this is one of the most important building. This is where Dalai Lama was staying in Tibet. So it is the name Potala, right? Actually linked to Potalaka. Potalaka is, we believe it was a place south of India, and it used to be the abbot, right? The place of stay of Avalokiteshvara. So these two sacred places have direct link to Guan Yin Bodhisattva or Avalokiteshvara. So of course, in today's, if we go to some monastery, we have huge Guan Yin Bodhisattva, for us to do prostration. So this is in Hong Kong, in Shishan Monastery. I believe the height of the statue is about 20 stories, about 72 or 74 foot high. And yeah, it was big enough, right? You could see that far away from, well, somewhere like a few kilometers away from Tsushan Monastery, from Hong Kong. You could see that. And also, this is also a very massive Guanyin statue, right on the ocean. It's called on Hainan Island, Hainan Dao. Yeah. So this shows that how important the Guanyin belief is for Chinese Buddhism. And we see that one in Hong Kong and one in China. Of course, if you go to any Chinese temple or the Chinese Mahayana Buddhism, and then you will see that Guanyin Bodhisattva is everywhere. But interesting enough, if you go to Malaysia, if you go to some Theravada temples, you will also see Guanyin Bodhisattva. I believe that because this is also a respect to a local people to know that, oh, Guanyin Bodhisattva is not only a Bodhisattva, but it's more like a local motherly figure, like a motherly god, a goddess to most of local people. So as a way to pay respect. So some Theravada temples also they have the Guanyin Bodhisattva statue. So it's not a surprise. So where did it come from? What is the origin of Guanyin? Well, of course, similar to many aspects of Buddhism in India, the date of appearance is still debated among scholars. We don't know for sure when did it start. But there are two sayings. One says it's about the 5th century of Common Era, right? Based on epigraphic evidence. Epigraphic evidence is based on the text, right? Based on textual evidence. But some of them also cited the archaeological findings. They say that, oh, as early as the 2nd century Common Era, we already see the statue of Guanyin Bodhisattva, especially in some of the caves that appear in India, in the northwest India, like Ajanta. We already see pictures or paintings or crafting of the Bodhisattva statue on the wall. So this shows that these images, right, actually come together with the rise of Mahayana Buddhism, especially in Gandhara, which is the modern northern Pakistan, and Mathura. Mathura is the south of New Delhi, right? These are the two places where we find that where the Mahayana started the influence, and we already see the early image of Guanyin Bodhisattva. It's interesting now. It's quite early, yeah, almost together with the arising of Mahayana Buddhism. All right, and of course, the image or the understanding of Bodhisattva, of the Guanyin Bodhisattva, it wasn't static, it changed. Initially, we believed that before the 5th century, right, Avalokiteshvara actually appeared as an attendant Bodhisattva beside the Buddha, right? We have the Buddha in the middle, and then we have a Bodhi, and then we have Avalokiteshvara, who is more like an attendant to the Buddha, who represents great compassion, right? And sometimes Avalokiteshvara was paired with Vajrapani, especially if we see in the Tibetan Buddhism. Vajrapani is actually this figure here, right? It's a little bit fierce looking, and sometimes also together with Manjushri, right? Manjushri shows the power of wisdom, and Vajrapani is the representation of power to overcome our obstacles in our Buddhist training. So together we have compassion, we have wisdom, and then we have representative of power to overcome our obstacles. And then when the time moves on, we go to the 6th century, we already see there are many images or paintings recorded at Ellora. Ellora is a cave, right, where we see a lot of paintings still We still can see them if you go to the northeastern part of India, right? So, but later on, we started to see that Avalokiteshvara, he started to become an independent. He has kind of his own retinue, right? And he made some specialized vows, and he appeared to be, Bodhisattva appeared to have some different images and to serve some very specific purpose for the need of the disciples who come to worship her. So this is the changes of the Bodhisattva from and kind of more like a dependent attendant, and then slowly become an independent principal bodhisattva. So we can see that this image change from during the period of a few centuries. All right. So when the idea or when the belief of Guan Yin Bodhisattva started to emerge in China, right? This is about the 6th century, right? About 6th century, and India, of course, is already like happening to the peak. It's already happening to the peak. So this is one of the painting, as we mentioned before. This is actually found in which cave? Found in Ajanta cave. Yeah, Ajanta, Ellora is actually next to each other. This is actually found in Ajanta cave. We see that the artist, right, they carved Avalokiteshvara as a savior. All right. So as time move on, we can see that Avalokiteshvara has already gained the very specific purpose of aim of helping people, right, and becoming a savior to people who are actually in troubles or in suffering. And how about in China? It's about the same time, about 6th century, right? Even China, we also see that the blossoming of the growing of the belief in Avalokiteshvara. This painting is actually come from the sutra. We call it the Lotus Sutra, especially on chapter 25, right? We call it 妙法莲华经, 观世音菩萨普门品, right? This is the chapter where Guan Yin Bodhisattva was discussed, and her special power, her special purpose, how she is helping or how he is helping the people, the believers, were actually very well described in this sutra. Right? If you have chance, right, I recommend you to read it. You can find in English translation very easily. So this painting, right, is a depiction inspired by the Guan Yin. Right, this whole chapter is about Guan Yin Bodhisattva. So we can see that from throughout the whole Asia region, the initial Avalokiteshvara started in India, and then it slowly evolved from an attendant to a compassionate savior. Until what we are seeing today, we always look at Guan Yin Bodhisattva as a savior to our problems. So, and about the beginning of the 5th century, we have the 妙法莲华经, the Lotus Sutra we just mentioned. The most commonly used translation, the Chinese translation, was by Kumarajiva. So it is still the book or the sutra, the translation that we're still using nowadays. We chant this in some of the very important ceremonies in the temple, especially the chapter 25, right? The universal gate, called the Pumenping. It talks about how Guan Yin Bodhisattva help people. So why the name Guan Shi Yin? Why is it called Avalokiteshvara or Guan Shi Yin? Because he is a perceiver of the sound of the world, right? When anybody who is suffering, when everybody who cries for help, Guan Yin Bodhisattva will appear in the form that the person can relate to, right? For example, you say that, if an emperor cry for help, and then the Bodhisattva will appear as another emperor to attend to the need of the person. If an old lady, if a child, even if a man, right? They need a help from Bodhisattva. The Guan Yin will appear as the person that the most easily related to the person in suffering. So this is how powerful Guanyin Bodhisattva is. So we always say that, in Chinese Buddhism, we always say that, well, when we're dealing with some other people in daily relationship, we always look at somebody as a bodhisattva, especially female figure. We always think that, oh, she is an embodiment of Guanyin Bodhisattva. This is a way to remind us. We were told by the old masters that, oh, you have to treat everybody as a bodhisattva. So especially Guanyin Bodhisattva, because Guanyin Bodhisattva has the power to become any form. He could come as a form of animal, an insect, or anything that can help us to help us to train our compassion, to let our compassion arise. So in the sutra, it says that the Guanyin Bodhisattva she had make a promise, right? So anyone who call his name, Guanyin Bodhisattva, right, with single-mindedly when they're in danger, and she will come and help them. So this is what a promise made by Guanyin Bodhisattva in the sutra. Okay, so further on, right, not only the Pumenping, or not only the Universal Gate, Guanyin Bodhisattva was also mentioned in another very important Chinese sutra we call the Avatamsaka Sutra, right? 大方广佛华严经. Okay, we have a very interesting story in this sutra. We talks about a young boy whose name is Sudana, right? Sudana he was sent by another bodhisattva to go to visit to different teachers to learn from them. So one of the teachers that he went to learn from is the Guanyin Bodhisattva, right? So, and also in the Avatamsaka Sutra, the place where the Guanyin Bodhisattva was staying was actually well described, right? How it looks like. So these are the descriptions of the Putosan that we believe this is where the Guanyin Bodhisattva was staying, according to the Chinese Buddhism. So Avatamsaka Sutra is so very important in mentioning of the Guanyin Bodhisattva in Chinese Buddhism. Right, further on, right, and then of course the Guanyin devotion is spread very wide, right, and then because the Bodhisattva is always very close to the daily life of normal folks like us, so we have also a collection of recorded miracles, right, of those who rely on Guanyin and other deities. For example, there's a well-known account that appears in one of the Gao Sheng Zhuan. Gao Sheng Zhuan is the biography of some eminent monks, right, during the Tang Dynasty. So one of them is called the monk Gunabhadra, right? Monk Gunabhadra was one of the monks who came from India and then who brought with him a lot of Sanskrit text and then translated in China. So the Chinese people at that time actually had pay high respect to Gunabhadra. So for Gunabhadra, there are some legends about how Gunabhadra actually encountered Guanyin Bodhisattva, right? So one of the very famous story was when Gunabhadra, he was on a ship, right, with a lot of people. They were sailing on a ship one day, and all of a sudden the wind stopped blowing, right, and then the ship just kind of stuck in the middle of the ocean without any drinking water. So what he did was, because he has strong faith in Avalokiteshvara, so he chanted the name of Guanyin Buddha, of Guanyin Bodhisattva. He not only did himself, but he also asked everybody on the ship to chant together with him. So according to the legend, what happened was, and then immediately it started to rain, the wind started to blow, and everyone was safe on the ship, right? And not only that, there were other stories that were recorded by later people. Was that initially when Gunabhadra, when he arrived at China, he couldn't speak Chinese, but then he wanted to translate Sanskrit text. So what did he do? So he did prostration to Guan Yin Bodhisattva every day and night, until there was one night he dreamed about a figure, like a saint figure wearing in complete white suit, who came and helped him to kind of replace replace his brain. And then when he woke up, he could understand Chinese, right? But believe it or not, this is according to the story, the legend. And also, there's also another famous story about during the wartime. Guna Batra, actually he fell into the water, right? And then he couldn't swim, so and then he asked, and then he chanted the name of Guan Yin Bodhisattva, and then there were this young boy who suddenly appeared at the shore and saved him, right? So that's why after these incidents, according to the legend, Gunabhatra has strong faith with Guan Yin Guan Yin Bodhisattva, and then he translated a few texts. Actually, they were specifically dedicated to to Guan Yin, right? And now become today, we still see the records, and these are some of the stories that about how some miracles that happen between these believers and Guan Yin Bodhisattva. Also, if you are familiar with Xuan Zhang, right, especially in the 西游记, 西游记 is the Xuan Zhang story when Xuan Zhang went to India to collect the Buddhist text in Sanskrit. So there was also a story that mentioned that he was lost, right, in the middle of the desert, and he was almost dying without any drinking water. So what he did was he chanted the Heart Sutra, right, which is about Guan Yin Bodhisattva, and then he chanted the name of Bodhisattva. So according to the story, he was also safe. Right. But not only that, we can find a lot, countless encounters, stories, or legends about how people can find very deep connection with Kuan Yin Bodhisattva in Chinese Buddhism. Even myself, there's a little story I would like to share with you. There was when I was yeah before I became ordained, there was about 2 or 3 years I was in between working and giving my service at the temple. So I remember at that time my master, he asked me to really dedicate my time and make a very sincere prostration to Guan Yin Bodhisattva every day. So I did, right? I was a good student. So I followed the instruction every day. I spent like, I don't know, a few hours a day. I don't know how many prostration. I was just standing in front of Guan Yin Bodhisattva, and then I chant the name, Namo Kuan Yin Pusa, right? And then I make one prostration very slowly, and then repeat the process again and again. Well, believe it or not, well, after a while, right, and of course, I succeeded to pursue my family, and then I became ordained. So this is, for me, is something, well, I won't say it's a miracle, right, but it's something that should help us to gain faith. So what I'm trying to say is, Guan Yin Bodhisattva is not just a figure, like a Bodhisattva figure in Chinese Buddhism. It also carries a heavy weight in faith. I know that in religion, right, faith is one aspect which is very important. So especially with Guan Yin, Chinese people and the Chinese society, we feel very deep connection. So we have not only the sutra, we can hear all the stories or legends about miracles of how Guan Yin has helped people. So this is how it is in the Chinese community. So, and then, of course, the Guan Yin belief, it continued to develop in China, right, during the Tang Dynasty, which is about the 7th century to the beginning of 10th century, right? And actually, Buddhism was actually flourished during that time for at least 300 years under the Tang Dynasty. And the belief in Guan Yin Bodhisattva is actually also being very well developed uh, and expands across the Chinese society, right? There are many with three ways that Guan Yin belief actually being developed. One is through what we call the Pure Land Buddhism, right? We know that Pure Land Buddhism is you chant the name of Amitofo, right? Namo Amitofo. Amitofo is the Buddha who actually created the Pure Land in the West. We call it the 西方极乐世界 in the West. And then we believe that Guan Yin actually is one of the main student or disciple of Amitabha, of Buddha Amitabha. And this is a proof, right? Because if you look at the Guan Yin statue we showed earlier, it's very easy to recognize Guan Yin Bodhisattva. If you go to any temple and you don't recognize, you just look at the forehead, right? At the forehead of Guan Yin Bodhisattva, there's always a figure of Amitabha on top of the forehead, and she is the only one carrying that. That shows that how she hold her teacher, who is Amitabha, to the highest respect. So if you see that Buddha figure on the forehead of a Bodhisattva, 100% that is Guan Yin Bodhisattva. So Guan Yin is very well related to Pure Land Buddhism. We believe that if you are practicing the Pure Land Buddhism, you will know that by the time, right, at our deathbed, if we have enough faith in Amitabha, and then according to the sutra, if we can maintain that focus single-mindedly long enough, and when the time comes, you will see Amitabha comes together with Kuan Yin and Dashizi Pusa, which is another Pusa by the side of Amitabha. So we will see three figures coming from the sky and to lead you to the Pure Land Buddhism. So this is how the Pure Land Buddhism, this is how they believe. It's actually this is recorded in a sutra to tell us that Guan Yin Bodhisattva not just helping people who are living, it helps us to get to the Pure Land of the West as well. So this is why the Guan Yin belief was very well developed. It was developed together with Pure Land Buddhism when it became flourished in China. And the second method it was being developed is, of course, the Lotus Sutra, right? Lotus Sutra on the 27th chapter is talked specifically of Guan Yin Bodhisattva. It's very widespread. If you go to a temple ceremony, you must have heard of it, especially in Japan. If you go to the Zen temple, the Zen school, you ask around, you go to the Zen temple, and if you have a chance, listen to their ceremony about what they chant, right? They always chant the Pu Men Pi, the Universal Gate. That is it become an independent sutra. It's not long. It's about 10 to 15 minutes. You can finish chanting it. It's very common. I remember when I was still in Kyoto, the temple that I went to every week, we did chant the same sutra every morning as our morning service, right? So this is Lotus Sutra is so much into Chinese Buddhism, but also Japanese Buddhism, which is a direct inheritance from the Chinese Zen school. So these two ways help the popularization of Guan Yin belief. And the third one, of course, is on the Tantric, the Vajrayana Buddhism, that is called it, especially on the Tibetan Buddhism. But this is very well known. It spread so broadly, globally. So we also have a new rituals and a new icon which is associated with Guan Yin, right? And also that helps to elevate Avalokiteshvara status. So we can see that there are different ways and there are different practices, rituals, or Buddhist philosophies. Actually, there's so much entangled with the idea of Guan Yin and make Guan Yin become one of the most well-known figure in Chinese Buddhism. These are the three ways that were being that we could see that helped the expansion of the belief in Guan Yin. Right. Not only that, right? So it's interesting to know that after a while, at first we knew that Avalokiteshvara, it came from India, but after it reached China, right? I think within a few centuries, you already see that there's a process called the signification of Guan Yin. Signification means that the figure becomes part of the culture, the local culture. Here it refers to the Chinese culture. So what happened was Avalokiteshvara, right, it came from India to China, and then it became a Chinese figure. Right? So we can see that Guan Yin devotion became widespread across different classes in Chinese society and regions. Right? So everybody started to know Guan Yin, right? And then we started to see many different forms, like what? Like we started to see different iconography for some very specific blessings of Guan Yin. Well, one of them is called the water moon Guan Yin, water and moon, right? So it also refers to a serene moonlit contemplation, right? Water and moon, you see that that's a kind of give you the sense of serenity. So Guan Yin Pusa is also related to, there's also a statue that relates to the water moon Guan Yin. We have another interesting one, it's called the fish basket Guan Yin, right? So it shows the teaching it's trying to show is that, oh, the Guan Yin Bodhisattva actually gave guidance to people, not true profound teachings, but something that happens in everyday life. Okay, we'll talk about that afterwards. And then we have another interesting one. It's called a clam Guan Yin. Yeah, right. Clam is the clam that, the seafood that some people eat. Clam. So it shows the compassion that revealed in a shell, right? There's a story I'm going to tell you about afterwards. And also there's a one kind of Guan Yin we call the child giving Guan Yin. 送子观音, right? To help people to make prayers for fertility and healthy children. And then we have one of the very well-known stories about Guan Yin is a princess called Miao San, right? We believe she is embodiment of Guan Yin in the world, especially in China, to help to spread the teaching of Guan Yin. So let's look at that one by one. Okay, so this shows that even though we have one Guan Yin in general, right, one Guan Yin who represents compassion, but this Guan Yin, she has many responsive manifestations. We call it Yin Hua, right? Because in the sutra, it says that it depends on who is calling for help. Guan Yin Bodhisattva will appear to be the person that is closely related to the person, so that the trust can be developed very quick and easily between the two persons, so that she can help the person. So responsive manifestation is one of the most important characteristics of Guan Yin. Okay, this is a statue, right, of a wooden statue of the thousand eye out of this one, right? Like the video in YouTube we just saw. This is there are 1,000 arms, right? Of course, this we won't see 1,000 arms on this statue. So each of the arm actually is holding a different kind of tool, or a very sacred tool that can have different functions. It's symbolic, right? Like we have the mala beads that shows that, oh, you need to practice on your own as well. And then there are some other tools that can help you to overcome your obstacles. There are some tools that can give you strength. There are some tools. So it depends on what you need. She got thousands of them. So you can really find something that you need. So that shows that how comprehensive and how helpful a bodhisattva can be. If you have faith in him or in her. There was one very there was one joke that we always pass around in the temple is actually it was according to a very famous story. I think it says like this: someone, right, saw Guan Yin Bodhisattva holding a mala bead in a hand. We know that the mala bead is for you to chant the name, right? Either you chant the name of Amitabha or you chant the name of Guan Yin Pusa, right? Guan Yin Pusa, Guan Yin Pusa, Guan Yin Pusa. So what happened was somebody saw Guan Yin Bodhisattva holding the mala beads, and then chanting her own name, Namo Guan Yin Pusa, Namo Guan Yin Pusa. So he got confused and asked the Bodhisattva, why are you chanting your own name? You are the Guan Yin. Why are you still chanting the Guan Yin Bodhisattva? So Guan Yin replied that, oh, of course, we are the one who can only help ourselves. How can we depend on other people to help us, right? But actually, this is it has some philosophical. Not only philosophical, but about the practice, or one of the very important idea behind Buddhism is that we believe that every one of us, deep in our mind, in our heart, we already contain what we call it the seed of the Buddha, right? That is like a light, or it's like a seed waiting for it to become ripened, and then will become enlightened. So by chanting the name, by looking deep into our mind, we can find that, oh, we are already enlightened in a way. It's just at this moment that our mind or our heart has some delusion, is polluted. So what we need to do is we need to clean it one bit at a time. Keep doing it until it become purified and become cleansed again, and become clean again. So this is a whole idea of the Buddhist practice. And Guan Yin Bodhisattva, the reason of having so many tools is to help us to purify ourselves and to become clear with our body mind to show its light again. So this is the idea of the practice. And this is another Guan Yin statue. It's a wooden statue of Water Moon Guan Yin, right? If you go to Fagusan in Adamajang Mountain, in Jinshan, right? And then you will see there's a hall. We have the Sui Yue Guan Yin, right? The Bodhisattva Guan Yin was sitting there with this posture, very relaxed, very calm, very steady, that give you that, oh, this is how we should be when we're practicing Buddhism. You don't need to feel tense, but what we have to do is to relax and to just let our practice and our training, flow by itself. So that is the idea of the Water Moon Guan Yin Bodhisattva. You need to maintain calm inside yourself, right? Not to rush, not to be anxious about not achieving this, not achieving that. No, these are the worldly, we call it worldly things that were triggered by our greed. So what the Moon Guan Yin, actually, he wanted to tell us that this is not the way. Look at how I'm sitting, relax, right? So you can just see that on the forehead of the Guan Yin, you can see Amitabha on the head. So this is definitely Guan Yin Bodhisattva. And the first one we're going to talk about is a fish basket Guan Yin. This is a statue of Guan Yin, right, holding a basket, and actually there's fish inside, actually. So it came from a biography. It's called it a Guan Yin Gan Yin Zhuan, right? Guan Yin Gan Yin Zhuan, it means that the stories are being inspired, by connection with Guan Yin Bodhisattva. So it was as early as 9th century. So according to this biography, it mentioned that there was one time in Shanxi, in China, there was a beautiful lady who was a fish seller, and because she was so pretty, and then there were many guys wanted to actually asked for a hand for marriage. And in the end, she did, right? So what she did was she was asking, she set up like three different ways for them to, it's more like a test for them. Who could actually pass the test would have the opportunity to marry her. So the first question she put was, okay, anyone who can recite the universal gate, right? 普门品. Oh, and a lot of people try. After one night, okay, out of so many people, so many guys, 20 of them pass because they could recite the universal gate. Okay, and then she asked again. The second part was, anyone can recite the Diamond Sutra, can have a chance. So all they did, right? So this time, 10 people remain, and right after 3 days, and then they said, okay, now who can recite the Lotus Sutra? The Lotus Sutra is long, like a whole dictionary. But then this guy, Mr. Ma, he succeeded after memorizing it for 3 days. So then, according to the story, what happened was, on the day that she was supposed to get married, she passed away, right? And then a monk appeared in the story. It said that the monk opened up the tomb and found that there's no skeleton inside, there's no body, but only a golden bound skeleton in the coffin, in the tomb. So, and then the monk declared that, oh, she was not an ordinary person. She was actually an embodiment of Kuan Yin who appeared in a human form. So what did the story mean? What did it mean? It's trying to tell us that this is the way Guan Yin Bodhisattva came to our world to help us. She always embodies someone else, right? And then in ordinary encounters. So the purpose is to encourage people to learn Buddhism and to practice no matter what, right? So this also so this is why we have the fish basket Guan Yin appeared in Chinese culture. And then how about the claim Guan Yin, right? So this is a painting on the claim Guan Yin. There's a big clamp behind the Guan Yin statue. So this is recorded in one of the 佛祖统计, right? It's one of the texts that was written in China by this person, Zhi Pan, right? He wrote this story. It is in Southern Song about the court in Tang Dynasty. So, okay, clicking that. What happened was, Tang Wenzong, one of the emperor in Tang Dynasty, he loved to eat clams, right? He eat a lot of clams every day. So there was one day, there was one very stubborn clam that just won't open up. So he couldn't eat it. So what happened was, so he asked for help, right? And then there was one very well-studied scholar, and then he came, and then he suggested to the emperor Wenzong. He said, "Oh, you should use incense. You burn some incense, and then you do some prayer, and then you make some prayers." He didn't mention what prayer he did, but I believe it would be the Buddhist text that he was supposed to chant. And then when he did, what happened when the shell opened? Right? And inside the shell, he saw a vision of Guan Yin, something like in the painting. The shell opened, and then there is a kind of vision of Guan Yin sitting in the shell. So what happened was, and then there was a chant master who's called Wei Zheng, right? He said, "Oh, this is an omen. This is an omen from Guan Yin Bodhisattva. This is the way that the Guan Yin tried to tell the emperor that you have to choose compassion and refrain from eating any more clams, no more seafood, all right, especially the clams. So you need to have faith in Guan Yin, and you have to follow the lead of Guan Yin Bodhisattva and to lead your country with compassion." So this is also another story, another legend that talks about how Bodhisattva, he manifested into the shape of a clam, right? And then to teach people about compassion and not killing, right? And non-harming to living beings. So that's why we have another figure of Guan Yin. It's called a clam Guan Yin. And the lesson is the Guan Yin legends work as a moral instruction, right? Just now we saw that for marketplace, now to palace. So it's so penetrating. It's in every corner of the Chinese society. Right, and this is also a very important one. The child giving Guanyin. It is actually rooted in the Lotus Sutra, the Universal Gate chapter, Pumampi. Right, what they say is the Guanyin in the Universal Gate, he or she made a vow that says that if you sincerely believe in the power of Guanyin, who vow to help all sentient beings, then you will be safe in time of danger. So this message was given again and again in the Universal Gate. So, and if you pray enough, and for children, if you are seeking for a boy, right? If you want to have a child at your home, and if you think, oh, I want a boy, then if you're sincere enough, you have enough faith, then you'll be having a boy, right? A baby boy who is endowed with blessings, virtue, and wisdom. And if you wish to have a daughter, right, the daughter will be well-formed, kind, loved, and she will have a lot of goodness in her. So this is a vow that was given by Guan Yin Bodhisattva, right? Anyone who have any wish, and then she will try to fulfill your wish, and let us fulfill our wish and have happy life. So that is the vow that was given by Guan Yin Bodhisattva. Of course, the signification of Guan Yin came to the conclusion where during the Song dynasty, right? This is about the Tang dynasty in about the last century of the first millennium. So the Guan Yin belief became so popular, right? So it was very well expanded and institutionalized. Right? It became what we see today, the Guan Yin belief. So we can see that the process of transformation from Avalokiteshvara, which has Indian root, and then it came to the figure of Guan Yin, which is so Chinese-like, right? So it has actually transformed from an Indian bodhisattva into a Chinese deity. Especially, this is a very famous story, which is called one of the story is called the Princess Miao San. According to the legend, right, the Princess Miao San, she was actually an embodiment of Guan Yin as well, and then she became a central Chinese narrative of Guan Yin, which we still believe by many Chinese Buddhists nowadays. The Miao San, if you mention about Guan Yin Bodhisattva, many of the Chinese Buddhists will tell, oh, this is Miao San Gongzhu, the Princess Miao San, who was embodiment of Guan Yin, according to the Chinese legend, right? So you can see that there's a shift of identity from earlier dynasty to Tang dynasty. We can see that the Guan Yin actually, Guan Yin was actually revered primarily as an Indian god. He's a bodhisattva, more masculine-like, right? Always showing a masculine figure. But then after the Tang dynasty, when we enter Song and later, so the Guan Yin image actually became someone more Chinese-like, right? And it's more feminine. So this is according to the history that because of the need of the Chinese people of the Guan Yin Bodhisattva as a motherly figure. So we see nowadays Guan Yin Bodhisattva is almost a feminine figure that is so deeply rooted in our local culture. Okay, let's talk about this Princess Miao San. Why is she so popular and why we always connect her with Guan Yin Bodhisattva as in Chinese Buddhism. So who is this Miao San? Right? We believe that according to legend, she is the third daughter of King Miao Zhuang. Right? She was a king at the time, and when the Princess Miao San, when she was a kid, right, she became a vegetarian by herself. And interestingly, she studied sutras, by the day, and then she knew how to meditate at night. So this just shows that how special she was. So she wanted to really practice Buddhism. So when she became a little bit, when she achieved adulthood, so the king, right? So, well, I need you to get married, right? Like your sisters who got married. And when you get married, then I need your husband to actually to take over the throne, right? As the next king. But then because she is so much into practice Buddhism, like she refused to get married because she already chosen the Dharma and she wanted to become ordained, right? Of course, you can imagine how the king became so furious, and then of course he rejected. But then, according to the story also, at that time the princess asked her father. She said, "Okay, I can obey your instruction to get married if you can answer me three questions, right? You can fulfill me three requirements. First one is tell me why people, when they're young, they're energetic and they can do whatever they want. They are strong, they have energy. But why when they get old, there's so many things they couldn't do. They couldn't eat and they walk so much slower. So this is my first question. And my second question is why, when we are healthy, we are so energetic, and we are sick, we became so weak and we need help from other people. And at the end, my third question was why we need to depart from the one we love when they get old age or when they pass away. Right. So these are the three questions I've been always thinking about, but I have no answer to. If you could answer my questions, fine, right? Then I will follow your, I'll obey you and I'll get married. If not, you have to let me do my practice, continually do my practice as an ordained nun. Of course, the father was furious and couldn't, fulfill her wish. So what he did was the king actually punished her with hard labor in a palace garden, right? Of course, according to the legend, and Princess Miao-san, she was guided, helped by gods, and then she completed all the tasks which was given to her. And there was not only that, right? The king also sent her to the someone called it the white sparrow nunnery, right? And to deter religious path. But then she persevered, right? There's so much hardship they'd gone through, but she still wasn't moved. She just wanted to become ordained. And of course, according to legend again, the story went by. The king was so angry that he killed the nuns in the nunnery, and then and then he actually accused Miao-san as being someone who is really unfilial. So what happened was her father was about to execute her, and then there was a mountain spirit who came to save her, and then that also according to the legend, Princess Miao-san, she also went to hell, and then she actually helped a lot of. She preached Buddhism and she helped many living beings. So this is a little bit more like the story went a little bit kind of becoming a fantasy, right? She went to the hell and then she helped other people over there. And then she reached Fragrant Mountain and she meditated for 9 years and then she became enlightened. So it's not finished yet. So, and then there was one day, right? His father, the king, he felt so ill, and the doctor prescribed a cure for him. He said that, oh, you need to find someone who hasn't got any anger in themselves, and then you need to use their eyes and their hands to cure yourself. So, of course, right? There's no way to find someone like that. So who could say that they have no anger in their mind? So what happened was Mel Shan, when she heard about this news, she went back and then she offered her own eyes and hands. And the king, at the end, he recovered and then he recognized, oh, that was my daughter who came back to save me. And then the king was so sorry. He repented, and then the royal family, also the whole family, became disciples of Buddhism. So, and at that time, Miao-san, Princess Miao-san, she revealed herself as a thousand-eyed, thousand-headed Guan Yin, and then she passed into the Van. And then after course, the father built a pagoda and to enshrine her relics into that pagoda. So, what does that mean? What does this story tell us, right? Is it This story has a very interesting, I would say, meaning behind it. It not only talking about the kindness of Guan Yin, it also talk about filial piety. Remember when in the last two lessons we were talking about when Buddhism first came to China, if he wanted to be accepted as a local religion, he has to adopt the local value as well. And filial piety is one of the utmost important value for Chinese people, even until nowadays. So this story is very elegantly, beautifully combined the value of filial piety with Buddhism renunciation, right? It's beautifully combined. It talks about the lady who wanted to become a nun, but then the parents, like the father, rejected, and how she could repay the kindness of her father by sacrificing herself. So this show a blend of a value of filial piety with the Buddhist renunciation. Isn't it beautiful? So it shows that ultimately, right? Um, ultimately, she fulfill her view through filiality, by self sacrifice. Um, Of course, if you look at another angle of this story, it also talks about because she's a female figure and it's not very common in Chinese Buddhism at that time who has a female bodhisattva who has so much influence on in the society. So it also offered the story also offered a chapter for marriage resistance, right, among the Buddhist women at that time. So because Princess Miao-san, she could embody the meaning of renunciation, the meaning of paying kindness through filial piety to our parents, and also to somehow empower the need of the woman to free themselves from the burden of getting into the life of a marriage, which was actually quite forceful during the ancient China. So you can imagine that with all these three characteristics combined together, this story was so successful and it became part of Chinese culture. Princess Melshan became the very best or very important embodiment of Guan Yin in the Chinese culture. Definitely. Okay, this is a depiction of Princess Melshan, right? And even until nowadays, we have Chinese monasteries in China. We still celebrate there are three dates that we celebrate the Guan Yin in the Chinese temple. One is on the birthday of Guan Yin, which is of February 19, according to the lunar month, right? The Chinese lunar calendar. On February 19, that is the birth of Guan Yin. But according to China, the Chinese belief is the birth of Miao-shan. And then of her enlightenment is on June 19, right? And on her renunciation is on September 19. So you go to any temple, any Chinese temple, the February 19, June 19, and September 19, we definitely have, well, most of the temple, we have the ceremony to remember and to celebrate the three most important life events of Guan Yin, which is related to Princess Miao-san, that the birth and her attainment of enlightenment and her renunciation. So this is about the story of Melshan, right? Okay, so as a conclusion, today we talk about how Guan Yin Bodhisattva became one of the most widely spread belief in China in Chinese Buddhism. How it started from Avalokiteshvara from India, who was a male figure, and then it slowly blended into the local belief, and it became part of a legend. And according to many stories of people, of devotees who has special connection with Guan Yin, and then slowly we see the Guan Yin Bodhisattva has emerged as different aspects, have very specific aim of helping people at different time. So this is what we call the Guan Yin 千百亿, right? She has many ways to show people how skillful she is in helping people with transforming into different forms. This is why the Guan Yin Bodhisattva is so much accepted into the Chinese culture. So the Guan Yin belief, right, it is very popular among the ordinary Chinese people, especially in folk religions, right? It has some very interesting characteristics. It kind of confirms with the Confucius thought of filial piety, posterity, and benevolence, right? It confirms with Confucius ideas. Even Taoists, right? We will talk about Guan Yin. People can pray for longevity of life. Health, the good, healthy body, and also performance of good. So this is also a very Taoist idea of a god or a goddess. And also, it fulfilled the Buddhist idea of saving the suffering of people. So you can imagine that one bodhisattva from India who could do all this, adhere to the Confucius thought of filial piety, adhere to the Taoist idea of longevity and performance of good deeds, and adhere to the Buddhist idea of saving people. Right? These three ideas are actually become the most important characteristic of Guan Yin, and that make him or her became so widely accepted into Chinese Buddhism, right? So in the end, Guan Yin is definitely a belief system that is resulted from the exchange of Indian and Chinese culture and belief, and this is one of the most successful, I would say, import import of foreign culture into Chinese Buddhism, and this is what we still see today. And if we come back to my story about how I encounter Guan Yin Bodhisattva, that's also some of my stories where how I seen Guan Yin Bodhisattva in my own life. So let me show you. Let's see, it is here. All right. I mentioned about 3 stories I want to talk about. So let's listen to the second story. This was a talk given at Chongqing Monastery in New York, because we have audiences of Chinese and English-speaking people. So alternately, I speak in between, like Chinese and English. We could spend like maybe a few more minutes or just finish.
是我还在念大学的时候，
It's
那
the
那
second
时候
part.
呢，面对学业压力啊，那情感的压力啊，对未来也充满了迷茫。那有一次，我遇到了我人生的第一位老师，他是一位法师，他并没有对我说大道理，他只是静静的陪着我说，其实你不用对自己的生活想太多，也不用说太清楚，但你要知道，人生不只有一条路叫成功。那时候呢，我第一次明白，原来人生有另一种选择，有另一种可能，就好像观音菩萨那样呢，不是只为求名利，而是求陪伴、奉献以服务他人。So the second time was during my university years. I remember that I was really overwhelmed by academic pressure, emotional struggles, and all the uncertainties about the future life. So one day I met a monk. Instead of giving me a lot of Buddhist preaching, he just sat with me and said, you don't have to figure out everything right now. You just know that there are many choices in our life. How we define success is not a one way that is defined by our culture. So that was the first time I started to understand that life has another kind of choice, value, like Guan Yin Bodhisattva, who doesn't really ask us to chase for fame or fortune, but simply stay with ourselves, know who we are, and support other people. 那普门品里面说，因以何身得度者，即现何身而为说法。我们都知道，观音菩萨呢，从来不是高高在上，而是呢，在我们最需要的时候，变成我们需要的一个模样。它可以是一位慈祥的母亲，它可以是一个陪伴，甚至呢，只是一句我们当下最受用的话，这些都是观音菩萨的身影。So in the Pumenping that we are going to chant today, there's one statement that says that the Guan Yin Bodhisattva appears in whatever form beings need in order to be liberated. So Guan Yin Bodhisattva is not a distant saint, but it's a form that comes when we need it most. Could it be a mother, a word of wisdom, and even just a quiet companion? 那你们可能会好奇。
Okay. That's all I will share today with you all about the belief and the development of Guan Yin Bodhisattva in Chinese culture from India to China. So if you have any questions, right, please don't hesitate. Type in the chat box and I will get back to you probably next week, right? We can discuss some questions you have or some comments or suggestions. So let's do our dedication today. Let you, all of us, to come back to where we are, sitting comfortably, feeling our body, making sure our gesture is still in a good position. Let's take a deep breath. Breathe out. Think about all the problems and difficulties, suffering that the people around us are going through from day to day. Not just ourselves. Everyone around us, no matter who they are, will experience some kind of suffering at some point of time. So we know that the vow of Guan Yin Bodhisattva is to help those in need in a timely manner. We can pray to Guan Yin Bodhisattva whenever we are in need. We can pray for wisdom. We can pray for kindness to guide us go through the difficulties of life. And not only that, Guan Yin teaches us that we can become Guan Yin to other people as well. Let us do some simple acts of helping people, of guiding people, of leading people out of their difficulties when they're in need. May it be a word of wisdom. May there be a simple act of kindness. Or maybe just a kind gesture, a greet to saying, I know you're suffering, but I'm here with you. So this is the spirit, and this is a kindness, the compassion that was taught by Guan Yin Bodhisattva to all of us. May we learn from Guan Yin Bodhisattva, and may we make a wish to become like her. May we dedicate our merit of listening to Dhamma tonight for the benefit of all beings around us. And may we ourselves and our family, our friends, those who we know or those who we don't know, be free from physical suffering, be free from mental suffering, and may all of us be at ease and at peace. Thank you so much for your attention tonight. We'll see you again next week. Amitofo.